I thought this comment of somebody saying that they're shocked to find out that like not everybody believes that like the root of abuse and violence in adults basically all stems back to them being mistreated as children. Because I think like that makes so much sense. And at the same time, as a kid, I had no awareness of that. And so I kind of want to share how people can get raised with these narratives that let them not see that. I was born in the early 90s. I live in a somewhat rural area, kind of lower income ish area, like lots of factory work and stuff like that. We lean red, like conservative, Republican. Most people are Christians. But with that context in mind, what I was raised hearing and seeing was that spanking and other like harsh parenting things like screaming at your kids and like not praising them and not being soft with them and things like that was necessary, and that it was all for the kid's own good, which like that's the title of that book I was reading. And that concept that all of this is for the good of the child was a really prevalent message that I got. It was almost like parents who spank their kids aren't allowing their kids to be bad people or to become bad people. And it would get brought up with sometimes with like the discipline of children, but also with like discussions around crime or around abuse, ironically. Something like a man that is known to beat his wife, well, I bet his mother didn't beat him enough when he was a kid, and that's what's wrong with him. His mom just totally indulged him, and he doesn't know what it's like to be told no. This wasn't like a narrative that I heard, but my internal experience as a child was that adults always assume the worst about kids and their behaviors. I felt like I can't cry because if I cry, they're gonna think I'm trying to manipulate them and to like one up them and take control. It felt like a whole lot of things were seen as the kid trying to like switch roles, like they're trying to be the parent and dominate the child, dominate you as the parent. Where I felt like I didn't want to be in control. I didn't want to be the parent. I just had emotions and sometimes ideas or things that I would have liked to have been able to express, but just expressing them or showing them was seen as like really trying to push back on their authority or disrespecting their authority. So something like a kid asks if they can have a candy bar at their grocery store. If they get told no, if that kid cries, well, that's because they're trying to force you to buy them what they want anyway because they don't like remember that they're the child and that you're the parent and that you get to call the shots. So it's like a threat to your authority if the kid doesn't like a decision you make for them. And so that was true for like sadness or crying, but also anxiety or like hesitation, like to obedience or to listening or doing what you're told. But by far and away, the most unaccepted type of behavior or emotion is anger. Like anger is seen as like almost pure evil. Like that is the one that is 100% absolutely you, that child is trying to become the parent and is like definitely needs to be put in their place. And the only like gentler parenting methods that I recall like hearing about in like the 90s and early 2000s when I was a kid were like grounding or timeouts or like being sent to your room. And those sorts of things, the narrative that I heard the adults in my life say about them was that they are not really effective at teaching kids anything, that kids don't really care if those are done to them, and that they're kind of like a cop out for just trying to avoid hitting your kid when you really just need to hit your kid. There also was this narrative that like being harsh with your kids is actually really hard for parents, but those who don't do it, it's like because they're being selfish. Like, oh, it makes me feel bad to hit my kid, so I don't want to hit them, but if I don't do that, then I'm being selfish because it really is in their best interest for me to hit them. So parents who would try to do things like timeouts or something instead of spanking would be seen as being selfish and kind of neglecting their kid's true need, with their true need being to be like harshly punished. There's a common narrative that moms have a tendency to be too soft and that that is very dangerous for kids and leads kids to be more naughty or eventually like have more criminal behavior even, and that dads are better at like being harsh with their kids, and that basically moms can kind of get in the way of dads being able to effectively punish their kids, and that that's a really bad thing and like something you have to look out for. Like, don't let mom soften dad. Dad needs to convince mom that he's right and that the kid needs the harsher treatment. We would sometimes watch that terrible Maury show, and on there sometimes they would have like preteens or teens who had really like unacceptable behaviors, whether it's like violence or crime, like stealing things or whatever. And they would kind of be sent to like scared straight programs or things like that. The story that was always kind of given to that in my family was these are kids who were allowed to get away with all this stuff, and like they should have been spanked more when they were younger, and then this wouldn't have happened. Another really common thing I heard was like comparison of siblings, and that was always used as a way of excusing parenting as not being the cause. So there's like two grown siblings that were raised by the same parents. One of them like hits their wife and has like a drug problem or something, and the other seems to be living like a typical life, doesn't have a criminal history, has a job, has a family that seems pretty healthy. Then that would be used as evidence that like some kids are just born bad, and like the good kid is evidence of the good parenting, but the bad kid isn't evidence of anything other than they were just born that way. I come from a large family, but one of my step siblings had criminal behavior like before I would really even say a preteen, like from like 7 or 8 years old, was getting in criminal trouble, and that has persisted their whole life. But that sibling was literally called a bad seed, and he was just born bad, and that's what's wrong with him. Like that was like the whole story. For me, the first time that I started to wake up to the fact that all of this was bullshit was in 8th grade. I started getting close to a new friend, and she was like one of the top. She got like some of the best grades in our whole grade. She had siblings who were as well. They were like at the top of their classes as well, and somehow like it came up that like the topic of discipline, and she said like she had never been spanked, and that like blew me away. And then she's like, yeah, like my parents don't believe in it, like none of my siblings have ever been spanked. And I was like, what? Like you guys are like this, to me what they like looked like this like perfect family, and like all of your siblings are successful, and that's possible without hitting your kids. Because up until that point I had just assumed that all of this was right, because it seemed like everybody around me agreed with it. So that was like the first thing that like kind of cracked through that thinking for me. But I really think the title of For Their Own Good really comes back to so much of it, because so much of the narrative is parents parent this way to help their kids, and if you believe that, then you can't also believe that it causes later harm and violence and mental illness.